A man dishonors his head if he covers his head while praying or prophesying. But a woman dishonors her head if she prays or prophesies without a covering on her head. For this is the same as shaving her head. This is from the NLT translation, which, Does this apply today? Are we dishonoring him? Should we be covering our heads as women? This is one of those things that goes around. So you guys may know some Mennonites or Amish people, or there's some Pentecostals and so on where women will cover their heads. In fact, it wasn't that long ago when all women wore hats to church. Does anybody remember that? Anybody from that? Okay, I got one, got two. Who else do I got? I got one. Going once, no. There was a time when women wore hats to church. That was just the culture, that they wore hats to church. And there are still some folks who think that women should cover their heads. There's a guy named Mike Winger who does YouTube stuff where he goes through the scriptures. It's actually very good if you guys get a chance to look at Mike Winger. He does some Bible studies. He spent about 6 hours on this question. I'm going to try to give you about 5 minutes on it. Bottom line is, the answer is absolutely, you women who do not have your heads covered. I don't know what you're doing in here. No, I'm kidding. People are like, is he serious? No, I'm not serious. 1 Corinthians 11, 4-5. Every man praying or prophesying, okay? So I want you to see that we have pray and prophesy. So before I get into anything, the most we could possibly be talking about here, is that when a woman is praying or prophesying, that she would cover her head, okay? And the reason that she would cover her head, and the scripture goes a lot longer than this. It talks about for the sake of the angels. It talks about a number of things in that context. But the idea would be if you're praying or prophesying. Now, I don't have any of you scheduled to prophesy today, so you're good there. We usually will pray 3 or 4 times during the service, and when that happens, we don't expect you to cover your head, and I'll tell you why. Because they lived in a culture where you covered as a woman, especially as a married woman, a woman that was in a home with a husband, you covered your head so that people knew that you were married and that you were under the authority of your husband in your home. Okay, that was a thing that you did. And so in their context, all the churches at that time, because this is how it was in the Greco-Roman world at that time, all the churches, the women would cover their heads if they prayed or prophesied. They would have, you've seen the Chosen or whatever, they wear the head coverings, right? Like women wore head coverings. There was a number of reasons for it. First of all, women's hair was an object of attraction for men that was pretty significant. So we see in the Bible talk about adorning your hair. And women, generally speaking, all women had long hair, okay? There weren't as many salons at the time. And so all women had long hair, and the hair was part of womanhood. We've lost quite a bit, and I'm not talking about long hair because I don't care about that. But the idea that there are things that apply to women and things that apply to men, you may have noticed some of those things are getting lost, right? That there is an actual way that a man looks, talks, and whatever, and a way that a woman looks, talks, and whatever. It's not so much about hair anymore. There are guys with long hair. There are women with short hair. That's not our culture. That's not the way that we determine those things. But there are ways that we determine those things. Those ways are getting less and less to where sometimes you're like, I don't know, right? Honestly, it's like you don't know. I don't know if that's a dude. I don't know if that's a girl. I feel bad for that person because they don't seem to know either. And there are ways. Okay, so for them, women wearing long hair and then covering their hair, it would have been almost, I think that it would have been showy in a certain way not to do that. And this is about authority. This is about showing that men are under the authority of God and that wives are under the authority of husbands. Now, I know you don't like that. That's the reality. Assuming that your husband is a godly man, serving God and serving you, women are under the authority of their husband. Their husband is under the authority of Christ, okay? And the Son subjects himself to the authority of the Father within the Trinity. We see all that kind of thing. This was a sign of that. And so they did that as a sign of that. Now, let me ask you, just think about this for a second, do a little thought experiment. If all of a sudden, when we prayed, there was a visitor here, and all the women all of a sudden put a baseball cap on, do you think anyone would know clearly they're showing that there's authority, that they're under God, that they're not trying to, nobody would know that. They'd be like, these people are weird, because that's not our culture. It's meaningless to us. It's meaningless to us. And so in terms of, do I think it still goes on today? Well, if I did, I probably would have told you by now. No, I do not think that this is something that's ongoing. I think the principle is ongoing. I think the principle that we are losing the idea of the glory of womanhood, the glory of manhood and the authority of God and authority within the structure of the home. Okay, that the man is to lead and serve his wife, to give his life for her as Christ did for the church. He used to love her as Christ loved the church and lead her. And that the wife and the husband are to lead the children. And that they actually, and here's the thing, they're supposed to do what you say. I don't know if everybody knows that. I've been down there in Acts Kids. Okay? They're supposed to do what you say. There are spheres of authority in your life. This was a way that we showed that you were under authority. The type of woman that would not cover her head at that time was making a statement, a kind of a rebellious statement, okay? That's not the case now. Nobody thinks, oh, she doesn't have her head covered? That rebel. Nobody thinks that. So this is not applicable to us because it would be meaningless to us. But the principle remains reverence and honor for one another, for the Lord, wives for husbands, husbands for wives.